Welcome to the New Books Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to New Books in African American Studies, a podcast channel on the New Books Network. I am Dr. Nakazi Oates, the host of the channel. It's an honor to introduce this living legend, Dr. Jessica B. Harris. She is a culinary historian, and she is one of the pioneers of the African American foodways studies. She has authored over 17 books over the course of her 40-year career. One of her most widely read works is High on the Hog, which inspired the hit Netflix show of the same name. She joins New Books to discuss her latest book, Braided Heritage. Welcome, Dr. Harris, to the show.
Thank you so much for that wholesome introduction, Kazi.
Oh, you're absolutely well deserved because you are a living legend. I begin these interviews with guests telling me and the audience a bit about themselves. And I learned through some other interviews that you were part of a group that aimed to infuse traditional newsroom with the spirit of the Black arts movement. Can you tell me a bit about your experience with that?
Wow. Traditional newsroom, I'm not quite sure. We were just at that point very young, and as you no doubt know, when you're young, you think you can move the world, build the world, and change the world. And so at that point in time, which was the very late 60s and early 70s, I had some friends from high school who were actually involved with a show on PBS called Soul. It was,
Mm,
it was Hayes Lip, and it was very much a landmark show. Um, and they were involved in the production and all of the rest of that. And we would get together periodically at the offices and talk about this and that. And at some point, somebody decided, well, let's take it was like a supermarket shopper magazine,
mhm.
and it was called The Black American. And they proposed to the publisher that we do a supplement that would focus on the Black arts. And it was certainly a time of the Black arts movement. And as some of the people were actors, some were photographers, and, we went on and proposed that we would write about various different disciplines. I think I was the book review person because I was the one that was reading everything that came out. And I discovered I could get free books if I did book reviews. So I did book reviews, and that ultimately is how I started writing. Because after about a month or 6 weeks of this, I was the only member of the group that was still going up there to turn in articles. So that's how it happened, and that's, kind of why it happened.
Mm. And how did you find your way to Essence? And what did it mean to be shaping stories for and about Black women, particularly at a time when few national platforms existed for that particular work?
That Black American work where I did interviews and book reviews. The book reviews morphed into interviews. And somewhere parallel along with that, I started writing for the New York Amsterdam News. I did theater reviews for them. And then took these sort of portfolio of these articles and went first to Encore Worldwide News and Report, which was a news magazine that was started by Ida Lewis, who was the original editor at Essence. And then when I had a portfolio that was large enough, went to Essence. I don't know what prompted it, but I went to Essence, and at that point, Moshe Ann Gillespie was the editor, and sat down, spoke with her, and ended up becoming, I think, the book review editor at Essence, if I remember correctly. And I could be dead wrong, but I think that's the genesis of it all. And from book reviews, I went to doing general editorial stuff. I did several feature articles, always tickled to have been one of the first people. I think I probably was one of the second person to do a lengthy piece on Toni Morrison and interviewed her back in the 70s. And when she was at Random House, there's that new book out, Tony at Random House, and I'm looking forward to reading that because that's a period in time that I remember.
Mm.
And then from the features and the book reviews, and occasional stuff hither and thither, ended up becoming the travel editor. And travel led to food, and that's how it happened.
Mm. Mm. I once heard you say that you identify yourself as a journalist and not a writer.
People are in the process of talking me out of that.
Okay.
But I mean, it's certainly at my beginning, I was journalist. You know, a writer is something I am working my way to being comfortable with.
Mm.
I mean,
Mm.
what I usually say is what I am is a, professor, a teacher,
Mm.
and the writing and the whatever else it is all comes out of that in a way.
What makes you uncomfortable about saying
Oh,
identifying yourself as a writer?
well, I think some of it is because in my formative years, that is to say the 70s, early 80s, I knew people who pretty much defined what writing was
Mhm. Mhm.
for much of the 20th and the 21st century. So Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, I am not a writer when stack me up with them. Um, at least I'm not to myself.
Mm. Over the decades of writing about food, what has surprised you the most about the power of food writing?
Well, I'm still learning about the power of food writing. I mean,
Mhm.
and it is powerful in certain areas and not all of them. Um, for many people, being a cookbook author is not writing it because for so many years it was for most cookbooks about recipe,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
about story or
Mhm.
background or history or any of those things. I mean, and I'm not a chef, so I don't fit in that either. But what I do is use food to talk about history in a way. So I guess the term culinary historian or food historian is the thing that most applies.
Mhm. It's so incredible that you have had all these experiences and traveled the world and had so many different um, entry points into journalism. One of the questions that I ask every guest is to take a moment to reflect on the fullness of their life and to name a moment where you had self doubt and point to a place in your career where you had the greatest achievement. What would those two things be for you?
Goodness. The self-doubt is probably yesterday or this morning or any point in time. I am in many ways uncomfortable with whatever this is that's happening.
Mm.
So self-doubt is very much a part of that journey. Imposter syndrome is real. Attainment, I'm not sure. I got a lifetime achievement award from James Beard And the interesting thing about that is that none of my books ever won an award.
Ah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I got the Lifetime Achievement Award during COVID.
Mhm.
So I didn't get to go to a ceremony. But the year afterwards, which I guess would have been 2023, I'm not even sure. I was asked to host the James Beard Media Awards. I did. And then, as they had me introduce the media award winners to the audience at the James Beard Chef Awards, Chef and Restaurant Awards, they happen on two different occasions, but in the same weekend. Um, I went out onto the stage of the Lyric Theater in Chicago and got a standing ovation. And I'm still thinking about that and wondering about that and parsing that out in my life.
Really?
Yeah,
Mm.
it was just a lovely moment, a feeling of attainment and possibly acceptance.
Mm. A Lifetime Achievement Award speaks to the body of your work as opposed to naming a singular work. It's the breadth of your scholarly and cultural production that gives recognition among your peers, but then also for the field and for the discipline.
And yeah, not arguing that, just it's a funny process.
Mhm. I
Mm.
bet. I absolutely get it.
Yeah.
I want to talk about braided heritage. In the introduction, you titled it, quote, "Three is the magic number." Where did you come up with the magic number of three?
Well, um, there was a show on TV called Schoolhouse Rock,
Yes, yes, yes. I do remember that, Dr. Harris.
and I was a fan of Saturday morning television when I watched television. And Schoolhouse Rock was a particular favorite, and I have in fact used it when I was teaching English, freshman English. So as I was trying to think about, what was the foundational food of the United States, and that is the braid. That song just kept coming back. It was kind of organic process. The genesis of the book was a speech that I gave in Natchez, Mississippi, decades ago, trying to think about the United States and what that was, or in the case of the Natchez speech, Mississippi, and what that represented. I kept coming back to the fact that there are these three foundational, if you will, cultures
Mm.
that have built or that are at bedrock, not to say the only, not, because there be dragons and I don't want to be fussed at, but the bedrock, because they are the kind of points of initial contact for the stuff that came together to form this country. And so it's certainly Native American,
Mhm.
European American, and on the points of contact, you're looking at the seaboard. So um, Europeans being the Spaniards, the British,
Mhm.
the Dutch, or the people from the Low Countries. I sort of subsume them into the Dutch, but the Netherlands, as in Netherlands, um, for the rest of the Europeans, the French. So for the Europeans, the Spanish, the British, the Dutch, and the French, and then the enslaved Africans who were, not necessarily coming here voluntarily.
You know, much of your work has explicitly centered on the African diaspora. foodways, but braided heritage widens for a broader and more entangled American story. What compelled you to enter into this expansive culinary history?
Braided Heritage is a book that I was kind of asked to write after
Mm,
I came off the podium from the presentation at the Culinary Professionals organization. An editor came over and said, that sounds so much like a book. Could you write a proposal? I would like to entertain the idea of buying this book. And I was like, yeah, sure. And she did buy the book and then ultimately left the publishing house. It's a long and convoluted story, but the end result was that that book turned out to be Braided Heritage. So it is, and probably unique in my books, in that it is one that I was asked to do.
mhm,
And I can't say I didn't completely do it, but it's just different being asked to do something and forming another iteration of what was in fact my idea, but not my idea as a book. So,
mm. As you describe it, that the contributions of indigenous peoples, Africans, and Europeans are all cultural threads that are woven together through history. And I'm fascinated by this concept of a braid. And to me, when I think of a braid, I see it as a thing that involves tension and intimacy. What do you think defines American cuisine? Is it the shared ingredients? Is it the power dynamics between them? Or the way survival shapes innovation across communities?
well, I would probably say, although I am using your words now, the way survival shapes creation, because that's kind of how it happens.
Mm,
For me, the braid is also all of those tensile things that you talked about, but it's three equal things that come together to form something different
mm,
that is, in a funny way, stronger than any of the individual parts that went into it.
mm, mm. When I read the book, and particularly your introduction, it made me think about the concept of fusion. And I want to explore this here in a deeper way. Would you consider American cuisine one of the first authentic fusion cuisines? Not fusion in the trendy or modern sense, but in a deep historical way, born from the collision of survival in the need to create something from many worlds at once.
Well, I mean, I think that that is ultimately what all food is.
Mm,
Don't know that that's
mm,
also an American story, American in the sense of the United States. It's certainly a story of all the food in this hemisphere, but it's also, the story of the foods of the Indian subcontinent. I mean, where would that be without the Dow trade and the spices and the individuals and everything that comes from Africa, from the Arabian Peninsula? As we start to look at food in general, that's one of the things that makes food history so compelling is it's always about a fusion of some sort. You know, the Italians say we taught the French how to eat,
right.
so I mean, that's fusion.
In the book, you profile some of the chefs and culinary historians representing the cultures of American food. So let's talk about some of them.
there's only one, well, two professional chefs in the book, and that would be Sean Sherman and
Mhm.
then Julianne Vanderhoop.
Mhm. Mhm.
And those are the only two chefs. The people that are profiled in the book are really just, for want of a better way of putting it, rabbits, friends, and relations. As I thought about this concept and as I was working at getting the proposal together, it was like, well, if we're going to call this a braid, if it's going to be tripartite, how are we going to get these recipes? What are we going to do? I didn't feel that I was the one that should be defining them. So, surprise, surprise, Jessica had friends in all of the categories. And so I literally opened my address book and called friends, did interviews with pretty much the same questions for all of them, and asked them for between 4 and 6 recipes that they felt were either their family go-tos or that they felt defined their culinary antecedents. And so that's kind of how that happened.
So talk to us about some of them. So the first one is John Barbary.
Bree is actually a friend that was introduced to me by friends because it's like, oh, you need to talk to John.
Mm.
Each of the, and there are 11 different people,
Mhm.
4 native peoples, 4 Europeans, one each from the Spanish, British, Dutch, and French, and then 4 African Americans. And for African Americans, I didn't talk about points of origin because that can get very fluid.
Mhm.
So what I did for African Americans was I talked about different trends that I thought or different vectors maybe that represented African American um, culture.
Mhm.
So it was innovation, migration. And then because we so connect African American food with the South, I wanted to be contentious, which does happen to me occasionally. And so had a friend whose family had no Southern roots. And so spoke with her. So that was how that chapter came together. And the final 4th person in the African American chapter is myself. Um, John Barbary is a Tunica Biloxi, and they are from southern Louisiana. And he is tasked within his tribe with working at bringing back the language. And
Mhm.
because the last, I think, fluent speakers died decades ago.
Mm.
So that's, that's part of what he does. Every person in the book has a kind of subtitle,
Mhm.
and his is cultural warrior because he's very much fighting to, as are most of the native people's profile, fighting to maintain and, document and remind people of their cultures and heritage. So that's John Barbary. And his recipes are interesting because they intersect with a lot of Southern Louisiana food, as
Mhm.
as do his memories.
Mhm.
There is a fricassee from him, but there is also a fricassee from a lady named Lenny Sorensen. And Lenny is African American, and I've used her for migration because Lenny is mixed race. Her mother is white, and her father and stepfather are both from southern Louisiana. I think I know her stepfather is from southern Louisiana. I may have misspoken about her father. But the point is that Lenny has a fricassee in her recipes that she offered That's a very close parallel to the fricassee that John Barbary gives.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
you got all of that, connection and tension
Right,
that's
right.
right there.
Mhm. Talk to us about Peter Rose.
Well, Peter is the anomaly in that she is American. She's an American citizen, but she was not born here.
Mhm.
She is actually Dutch. She's the only person who is not just, representing a group that came, but who is Dutch. Uh, so the interesting thing about Peter Rose is that she is the culinary historian of record for Dutch food in in the United States. She is the one that has translated many of the handwritten records and recipes from the Old Dutch into English, and who really has laid the bedrock for, what is any study of Dutch food and the Dutch food of New Netherlands. In that sense, she was just absolutely the perfect person because she not only knew recipes, but gave recipes that harked back to the traditional.
And talk a little bit about Abigail Rosen McGrath.
Oh, yeah. Abigail is my great regret because Abigail died in December and never got to see the book.
Mhm.
So I am, deeply unhappy about that, to say the least. But Abigail is an African American who didn't have Southern roots. She only went down to the South as an adult. Um, I went south only as an adult. I'm not a child that got sent south to visit relatives during the summer, but there were relatives. Abigail is actually Dorothy West, the Harlem Renaissance writer's niece, and her mother, Helen, sometimes is spelled Helene. Johnson was also a poet of the Harlem Renaissance and the period just following that. But they are out of Boston, and Abigail was raised in New York City. So no Southern roots, and her recipes reflect it.
Mhm, mhm.
Recipes like salmon poached in milk and sardine sandwiches and B&M baked beans and, Johnny cakes and things that really speak to a Northern sensibility.
What are some key ingredients that are representative of the cultures that you identified in the book?
Oh, goodness. Well, anybody who knows me knows I'm going to say okra for the Africans.
Mhm.
Um, Interestingly, I would say wheat for Europeans,
Mm,
and certainly corn for Native Americans.
mhm, mhm.
I mean, those would be three major ones. Along with wheat, we forget that there were no pigs in this hemisphere until Columbus. So all of that pork barbecue
Mhm.
is already braided. You've got, the traditional means of cooking that owe much to the African continent, let me put it that way. And a meat that is essentially European. So, you get all of that kind of braiding, all of those kinds of things that come together.
What is a dish that you highlight here in Braided Heritage that blends all of these cultures? You mentioned the animal product, and a while ago you mentioned the fricassee. But what dish could you point to that blends strands from indigenous peoples, Europeans, and Africans?
Well, there is in the book a Southern succotash,
Mhm.
and well, traditional succotash is sort of like lima beans and squash and corn. Um, in a Southern succotash, or in the Southern succotash that's in the book, which is, I think, the one that I grew up with, it's okra, corn, tomatoes, and there may be a bit of bacon flavoring it. And so the bacon, as we've just spoke of, is the pig, which is European.
Mhm.
The corn is Native American, and the okra is African. So you've got all three things in one.
The last question that I have for you, Dr. Harris, is tell me what you are currently working on.
I am working on two new food related projects. And then, and one of the food related projects is about my family and its relationship to food and the food history of the United States. Third is I am working, I think, I'm going to see on a novel. So we'll
Oh
see.
my goodness.
You never know. I might have to be that writer.
That's right. Just shake that pressure off of yourself, Dr. Harris.
Mm,
The expectations of what is a writer. Professor Toni Morrison would often say, and I'm paraphrasing here, to get the white gaze off of your back.
mm,
And I just think about, in this case, not the white gaze, but think about the sort of pressure that may actually exist, but may intensify in our own doing of the expectations of what it means to be this. Once when we lift ourselves from those things, that's where we find the beauty. That's where we find curiosity. There's something beautiful about self-naming and, you are what you say you are, and you absolutely are a writer of a different genre, and let you flex out those writing muscles and writing skills in this novel project if it should flow your way.
well, thank you so much for that. I will take that much to heart.
And one last thing, Dr. Harris, when I asked about self doubt and attainment, and you mentioned the James Beard Lifetime Achievement and how you are making sense of all of that, it sort of reminded me of James Baldwin. He never got the validation in his lifetime. And it's evident he desired that.
Mm,
I just mentioned him because after Mr. Baldwin's passing, his words have been quoted in so many spaces, including in the academy, his books. In fact, I took a class in my master's program on Baldwin. He was like one of three separate courses that I had on a single African American writer. That course on Mr. Baldwin as a religious writer. I just want to say that it's something special to be recognized while you're still alive so you can still receive and smell the flowers and actually see who's giving you the flowers too. I think about that with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the James Beard Foundation and your work.
well, there is a lovely picture that somebody took of me that the Beard folks sent me.
Mm,
And uh, I look at the picture, and the picture makes me smile because the picture is me signaling upon the receipt of all of that love and adulation, just how grateful I am.
mm. And I'm grateful for you. Dr. Jessica B. Harris is a culinary historian. She has authored over 17 books over the course of her 40-year career. One of her most widely read works is High on the Hog, which inspired the Netflix show of the same name. Her latest book is Braided Heritage, published by Clarkson Potter. Dr. Harris, thank you so much for being on the show. I am truly honored and grateful for our conversation.
Nikasi, thank you so very much. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Special thanks to David Hawk. I'm your host, Dr. Nakazi Oates. Thank you for listening.